let's jump right in because this is a hefty episode, y'all. We're talking sausage link stuffed, put in the grill. You know, Sarah's looking at me weird.
What?
Anyways, welcome to Story Sirens, the podcast where we explore myths and legends from books, movies, and around the world. I'm Yenny, and I haven't eaten, which is why I'm talking about sausage links.
And I'm Sarah, and today we're playing with the big boys now.
Oh, that's pretty.
If you know, you know. If you don't, no worries. Today, we are diving into Egyptian mythology and taking a
Cursory
look into the Egyptian pantheon.
Yup. Welcome to an introduction of Egyptian gods. Egyptian gods 101, if you will.
There's a lot to cover and only a little time, but fear not, this will not be our only Egyptian gods episode.
It's impossible to cover everything today, or tomorrow, maybe even the next day.
So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, most of the information we have concerning the ancient Egyptian gods comes to us from the inscriptions on the walls of tombs. These inscriptions are specifically known as the pyramid texts, and they date back to what is known as the Old Kingdom or the Age of the Pyramids. The dates of the Old Kingdom fall between 2700 to 2200 BC. We also have some information about the gods from the Book of the Dead, or the Book of Coming Forth by Day. Now, unlike how we view bound books today, or how the book was shown in the classic film The Mummy, the Book of the Dead was a collection of spells and funeral texts written on papyrus that were entombed with pharaohs and nobles, and often included illustrations depicting the dead making their way through Duat, the underworld. Earliest portions of the Book of the Dead were found during what is known as the Second Intermediate Period of Egypt. This would have been around 1780 BC. There have been many similarities found in the writings of the Book of the Dead and the pyramid texts. You can actually purchase modern reproductions and translations of the Book of the Dead if that's something of interest to you.
I don't know about you, Sarah, but for me, I'd like to keep my home dead-free for now.
I can't blame you.
Now then, on to the gods.
Or, onto some context for the gods.
Of course.
In the world of Egyptian mythology, there are gods, humans, and demons. Demons are right in between gods and humans when it comes to their power levels. The demon most people are familiar with, and one of the only named demons, is Ammut. Ammut had the head of an alligator and the body of a hippo and lioness combined. She would sit at the scales of judgment,
which we will cover in just a moment.
Another demon was Apep, the great serpent of darkness and chaos. He'll be mentioned throughout the episode, as he and the sun god Ra were constantly in battle with each other. In some legends, Apep is considered a deity as well, a god in his own right. Other demons could be categorized as wandering demons or guardian demons. Wandering demons were often responsible for minor daily irritations or joys, like losing a fish from your net or getting a headache or finding a scroll that you thought you had lost. They could be malevolent or benevolent, and were often doing what the gods tasked them to do. Guardian demons were, naturally, in charge of guarding gates and doorways to sacred places, and rarely acted on their own accord.
We will cover demons in Egyptian mythology in a later episode, but laying that groundwork was needed. Now, Sarah, stop this foolish mission. Give an exhibition on the gods.
Will do. So many of the gods had centers of worship, or cults, in ancient Egypt. This was most often the city where their shrine was kept. These shrines and temples often hosted the festivals of their gods, and daily life often consisted of the priests and priestesses opening the temple to the public at dawn, bringing out the statuary and symbolic images of the god or goddess, purifying it, presenting it with offerings, offering prayers and worship, then taking the statues back inside to place it in the shrine and closing the temple to the public at night.
That's a whole dang job.
It is a whole dang job. And man, throwing those parties and festivals was also a whole dang thing, because a lot of times people from neighboring cities or kingdoms would come in, and this would be their first time to get to see the statuary and iconography of these gods and goddesses. So, they'd make a whole party of it with walking them through the streets on a palanquin and everything. Now, in very early texts, there are references to what is known as the Ogdoad, a set of 8 gods, 4 male and 4 female, who are credited as being the primordial gods. The male and female gods were considered aspects of each other, and each pair represented a foundational creative power. These were the primeval waters, eternity, darkness, and air. When these gods interacted, a great explosion was believed to have occurred, which created the mound of creation that rose from the waters,
which was believed to be in the city of Hermopolis. Sarah, I think we can agree that most creation of the world theories we've covered, since the start of this podcast, when speaking about these myths, tie in a lot with our century's Big Bang Theory. Now, of course, we're talking about the real theory, not the TV show.
Oh, what? You don't think that they had an Egyptian god representative of Sheldon and Amy and Leonard and Penny and all them?
Maybe. I wouldn't
put it past them. All right. Now, these gods, these 8, the Ogdoad, ensured the sun would rise every day and that the Nile River would flow continuously. One of the gods of this group was named Atum, who became the high god of creation and kings as the centuries progressed and Egyptian mythology evolved. Now, similar to the Greek gods, the Egyptian gods often had domains of power. There's also a lot of siblings marrying each other.
Ah, yes. There it is. It was too nice of a story, We always have to have some kind of cannibalism, incest, etc. Yeah. These myths, man.
Yep,
They go deep.
All right, so now that we've covered the Ogdoad, which is some of the oldest of the gods of the creation myths, which, by the way, there are several different creation myths in Egyptian mythology, let's begin with the first family of the Egyptian pantheon. This is, we've kind of covered what the Greeks would say were like the Titans and the beginnings of the cosmos. Now let's go into the gods. And the first family of the Egyptian pantheon is the Ennead of Heliopolis,
which was a major religious city in ancient Egypt.
Now, the Ennead of Heliopolis is a group of 9 deities who are mentioned in the pyramid texts. So here's the first portion. We start with Atum, or Atum-Ra, who was the supreme god of the Egyptian pantheon. He created the universe and gave birth to several of the Egyptian gods. According to legend, in the very beginning of time when there was nothing, Atum formed himself from nothing. Then he spat air and moisture from his mouth, and those elements became the god Shu and the goddess Tefnut, respectively. But in the darkness of the nothingness of the world, Shu and Tefnut became separated from their father. Atum sent out his eye to find them, and when they were reunited with him, he called Shu life and Tefnut order and twined the two together. Atum was the patron god of the pharaohs of Egypt and was/is combined with the sun god Ra.
Shu, god of dry air and sunlight. He possessed the form, body, and head of a man wearing a headdress with a feather. He was the husband of Tefnut and father of Nut and Geb. Part of his responsibility was to help hold his daughter Nut, the sky goddess, above the earth, thus separating earth and sky.
Tefnut, goddess of moisture. Often depicted as a woman with the head of a lioness and a solar disk resting on her head, Tefnut was the wife of Shu and the mother of Nut and Geb. Her other forms included that of a woman, a lioness, and a cobra. She was closely associated with the moon and sun and was considered one of the guardians of the sun god Ra.
Nut, goddess of the sky. Usually depicted in her human form, but elongated, as she is the sky. Her naked body was covered in stars, and she was frequently painted on the ceilings of tombs, which I find super romantic.
Right?
I don't know. It's very elegant, I would
right?
say.
I kind of love
know.
it. I love it.
Yeah. Alex doesn't paint me with stars and put me on the ceilings. We're going to have a talk. Her dominion was the sky, the stars, astrology, and mothers. She married Geb, the earth, and had several children with him.
Geb, the son of Shu and Tefnut, he was the god of the soil and fertility of the land. Legend stated that earthquakes were merely his laughter. He, in turn, was the father of Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys.
Hold on. His laughter was earthquakes?
Pretty much.
He killed people in that laughter. What?
Yeah, I didn't say it was a good thing. I was just saying, oh, look at this happy little explanation
He
for
giggles,
a deadly occurrence.
and like thousands die.
Homes destroyed. It was a really good joke. So let's move on to the new generation of gods and goddesses, shall we?
Oh, this feels like the start of another rebooted anime. So
really
we just
does.
went through Naruto. We're going to go into Boruto.
Right. Well, we had to lay the groundwork with the grandparents and all that sort of stuff. And,
Yeah.
All right. So we are introducing Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. They are the second part of the Aeneid. Things start to become interesting here.
Interesting is a good way to put it. Osiris, the oldest son of Geb and Nut. Osiris was one of the most powerful of the Egyptian gods. Legend states that Atum, creator of the world, passed down the divine right of rulership to Geb, who then passed it on to Osiris, instating him as the ruler of all Egypt. At one point viewed merely as a god of plants and vegetation, he was later considered to be the high ruler of the underworld. Technically, to be more specific, he was a god of vegetation, but after his brother Set murdered him and his wife Isis resurrected him, he became the king of the underworld. I'd like to think that's a one-up, though, right? You go from being just a plain old god to the king.
Right.
So, similar to Persephone's descent into Hades, it was sometimes believed that Osiris was killed each harvest and then resurrected each spring. Part of Osiris's legend involved him introducing agriculture to the Egyptian people, bringing order and proper food to their chaotic, cannibalistic way of life.
They're the cannibals. There they are.
It is. Now, historically, there is no firm evidence that Egyptians were ever cannibals.
Just getting that out there.
But, just kidding. But it does make for a great myth, and it adds to the idea that the majority of the gods helped bring order and purpose from chaos and misery. And eating their distant cousins or strangers in need,
You know.
He's like, I need help. I don't have shelter. And they're like, yeah, let's come in this shelter right here. We're going to have you for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Osiris was saying, enough of that.
No more. Osiris is often depicted with either blue, black, or green skin. Each of these colors is representative of a part of his nature. Blue for death and the underworld, black for fertile soil, and green for resurrection. He is also shown in a state of mummification, wearing a crown symbolic of Upper Egypt, and holding a crook and a flail of kingship. He is often depicted smiling, showing that he is a benevolent figure who made people not eat other people.
Exactly. All right, moving on to Isis. Also known as Aset or Iset, she was the sister and wife to Osiris. Like Osiris, Isis was a hugely popular goddess who had a massive following. In fact, in the first millennium BC, she and Osiris had the largest following in Egypt. Considered to be a sorceress and giver of magic, a healer, one of the first practitioners of mummification, a protector and representation of the throne of Egypt, the divine mother of all pharaohs, queen of cosmic order, the wielder of fate and protector of women, it's easy to see why her popularity grew.
She's a girl's girl.
In short, she was considered a goddess of life and rebirth. She is perhaps the most complicated of the Egyptian goddesses due to having so many roles, which she is often credited as having taken from or sharing with the other goddesses. She is depicted as a beautiful woman wearing either a crown resembling a throne, a sun disk on her head, a sun disk with horns, or a vulture crown, my personal favorite.
Vulture crown?
It looks really cool. Look it up real quick. Look up Isis vulture crown. It looks so cool.
Oh, damn. Ooh.
Yeah.
I want one.
It's like this gold, for our listeners, it's like this golden skull cap that she wears on top of her head where the wings branch down towards her jawline and the head comes up forward over her forehead. It looks so cool.
It's so cool. Love it.
Mm-hmm. She is also shown to have large, beautiful wings similar to those of a hawk or a kite. When she is depicted with her wings, they are spread out, which is a protective gesture. When Osiris, ruler of the world, decided to travel the world to bring order and civilization, he made his wife Isis regent during his absence. Isis was a fair and just ruler during this time. After Set murdered Osiris, Isis was inconsolable. She retrieved her husband's body, which Set had tried to hide, and resurrected him. Here, the myths are unclear if she slept with her husband before or after his resurrection, but around this time she became pregnant with Horus and gave birth to him. While she was tending to Horus, Set found Osiris's body, dismembered it into 13 pieces, and scattered the pieces across the world. Isis was obviously devastated when she discovered what her brother had done, and enlisted the help of Nephthys and the other gods to help her find all of Osiris's parts. They found 12 of the 13. Care to guess which bit they couldn't find?
Am I allowed to be naughty and think, am I correct in my naughtiness?
You are correct in your naughtiness.
Dang it, yeah, I am. Man, that's worse. Leave him dismembered, man. That's yeah.
I mean, don't worry too much. Isis made a new one for her husband out of gold.
Hell yeah.
Because that works. Yeah.
She's like, listen, if I'm going to have to make it, it going to be in gold. No white gold. No, gold. I want it gold, and I want it to, you know what? Let me stop right there because I'm going to get nasty.
You're going to get in trouble. Now, Isis and Nephthys mourned over Osiris's destroyed body, and Atum-Ra took pity on them. He sent the gods Anubis and Thoth to help piece Osiris's body back together and prepare him for the first ever mummification. Once mummified, Isis kissed her husband and breathed life back into him. When he was resurrected, it was discovered that he was not alive enough to return to the land of the living. So Osiris was made king of the underworld, and his son Horus would become king of the land of the living. This is how Isis came to be the mother and guardian of all pharaohs, a guide and protector in the underworld, and a great healer.
Aww.
Now, on to the troublemaker, Set. Brother to Osiris, Isis, and Nephthys, and also the husband to Nephthys, Set, or Seth, was a complicated deity.
To say the least.
He was the god of strange and frightening things, such as thunderstorms, eclipses, earthquakes, deserts, and foreign lands. Not even kidding, that was one of his listed attributes.
Oh, look at that.
He also represented the sky at night, and it was believed that once a month he would swallow the moon, plunging the world into darkness. But he was not a solely evil deity. He was a protector of the dead on their journey to the afterlife, and offered the use of his ladder to those deemed worthy to ascend to heaven. He was also a guardian of the desert oasis, and even was an ally to Atum-Ra in fighting off monsters of the darkness. He would sit upon Atum-Ra's great boat that floated through the underworld and the night sky, and would protect his grandfather from the great serpent monster, Apep, also known as Apophis, who we mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But he grew cocky in this position and demanded that all the gods, including his grandfather, treat him with great honor and respect since he was the only god brave enough to face the monster. Now, Set was known to be bold and courageous, but he also suffered from a terrible temper, and, like his dominion, he himself was strange and unknowable. He was often depicted as a strong man with the head of a canine-like animal known as the Set animal. He was also believed to have red hair, and people born with red hair were thought to be followers or belonging to him. Now, as an aside, it's called the Set animal because archaeologists haven't figured out what the animal is supposed to be. It looks kind of like a dog. It looks kind of like an aardvark. At one point, they thought it was supposed to be a giraffe because it has these squared-off ear-looking things. So they were thinking maybe it was the horns of a giraffe. But in other artwork from that time period, there are very clear depictions of giraffes. So
yeah,
that's why it's called the Set animal. We don't really know what it is.
Maybe just Set drew whatever he thought was cool, and he's like, this
is my head. This is my animal.
Yeah.
Now, when Osiris traveled the world and named Isis as ruler in his place, Set was enraged by not being elected to the position. It was already bad enough that he hadn't been chosen to be the ruler of all Egypt by his father Geb. In addition, Set hated Osiris because of his own wife's, Nephthys, indiscretion, which we will get to momentarily. So Set plotted his revenge against his brother. He invited Osiris and several other gods to a great banquet. At the banquet, there was a beautiful cedar and ebony chest. Set offered it to whoever could fit into the chest. Fun party game, right?
Yeah, right. Why would you do that?
I know.
Why?
Of course, he had designed the chest so that only Osiris could fit into it. As Osiris lay perfectly into the chest, Set slammed the lid and sealed the box with molten lead before throwing it into the Nile River, which eventually flowed to the sea. Now, while he
made it. Like, he made it out of the box, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, Isis gets him out of the box, and then Set murders him and all this sort of stuff. So this is just...
Set murders him, like, twice, right?
Yeah,
he dismembers him once and then again.
Yeah, so he... Multiple times. It's a whole ordeal. So
talk about family drama.
Exactly. So we're just, slowly piecing together that whole myth.
Oh, is that a pun?
Not on purpose. Not on purpose. Now, while he was married to Nephthys, they didn't have a happy marriage. And he took on other wives and concubines. What?
I could see that. Like, what are you doing today, sweetie? Dismembering my brother.
Yeah.
Again.
Right. All right. So he took on other wives and concubines, including the goddess of fertility and childbirth, Taweret. Despite this, and despite the fact that he ate exclusively lettuce, which the Egyptians viewed as a holy food of fertility, Set had no children of his own and was considered to be an infertile god. To add insult to injury, in his later battle with his nephew Horus, which we will get to, Set rips out one of Horus's eyes, and Horus rips out one of Set's testicles.
Oh, that's good.
Right? His infertility is often attributed to the fact that he had dominion over the deserts, which were in turn barren. Regardless of his infertility, Set was a highly sexual god, choosing female and male partners alike. He was often aggressive and indiscriminate in his sexual pursuits, which did not help his poor reputation.
Dang, Nephthys, you really chose him. You chose him, all right.
Right. Speaking of, want to cover her?
Let's get into Nephthys. The last of the 4 children, Nephthys,
or Nephthwit,
was the sister of Osiris, Isis, and Set. And also the wife of Set. Oh my God, that's right, they're siblings, Lord Jesus. I just remembered that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then you didn't love one brother, but you definitely loved the other brother. All right, let's get into it.
Before you go any further, I will say an interesting part of like this Egyptian pantheon and everything is often the spouses, the gods and goddesses that are married to each other are often considered the opposite aspect of each other. So they're like meant to be in these pairs, but it's...
Incest ain't good. Don't do it.
Yeah, for sure.
She was often depicted as a beautiful woman, almost identical to her sister Isis, with a hieroglyph for palace and a basket on her head, and was known as the Lady of Mansions, or Lady of the Temple. She was considered the head of the household of the gods, and was the guardian of female heads of homes. She was sometimes considered the female counterpart of her husband Set, like Sarah mentioned, the god of the desert, and was the goddess of the air. She could transform into a vulture, which, along with her association with the desert and Set, led the Egyptians to believe Nephthys was a barren goddess as well. So, along with being a barren vulture goddess of the air, Nephthys became associated with the dead and the underworld, thus making her a parallel to her sister Isis, who was a goddess of life and rebirth. But both could transform into hawks or kites, and their piercing cries sounded like the wails of mourners, so a bit sad if you ask me.
Oh, yeah.
On a lighter note, she was also considered to be a bringer of rain and a source for the Nile River. So, even if she was barren, she cared for the people of the land by giving them water. So they were kind of like her children too, in a way.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So, in one myth, tired of her husband/brother Set ignoring her, Nephthys disguised herself as Isis in an attempt to seduce him. However, she caught the attention of Isis's husband, Osiris. The two of them slept together, and Nephthys became pregnant with a son. So we all know it was definitely Set. It wasn't her. She gave birth to Anubis, another god of the underworld, which we're going to cover a little bit later. In some variations of the story, things change. She did not disguise herself as Isis, but instead drugged Osiris so he sleeps with her. And then in another one, she convinces Set to sleep with her and finally bears a child. Despite her being married to Set and her adultery with Osiris, Nephthys and Isis were still very close. As mentioned earlier, it was almost impossible to tell the two apart. And in the artwork, you can only differentiate them based upon their headdresses. Remember when Sarah was talking about Osiris being dismembered so many times? Well, when Osiris was killed, Nephthys protected his body while Isis looked for his missing parts, and often helped her sister when she couldn't find all of Osiris's pieces. A bit of a sad tale, if you ask me. Now, before I was kind of like, poor Set, but then now knowing about what he does, I don't really care about him too much. In mythology, she was often considered to be the nurse mother of Horus, and therefore the nurse mother of all pharaohs. Finally, recent archaeological evidence has brought into question if she was actually married to Set, and was his counterpart at all, or if that was a mistranslation. So it's going to be really fun to keep an eye out on that story as it develops. I hope not. I hope that she was just Osiris's, other wife.
Right, like a concubine or consort.
I mean, they're still brother and sister, so I don't know.
Right, but, if you have to be with one of them, might as well be with the good one and not the mean one.
Very true.
All right, so that was the Aeneid of the Heliopolis. Who's ready for the next generation of gods?
Oh my God, that's right, there's more.
Right? We've only covered 9, and we have 1,993 left.
We're not doing all 1,000 today, guys. All 2,000.
All right. So for this next phase of gods, we are going to start with Horus, since we've brought him up a lot. But let's take a moment to say that there are several Horuses in Egyptian mythology, and their roles changed over the years, and I'm tearing out my hair trying to figure out what the timeline is. So the Horus we are focusing on today is the primary Horus, so to say.
Horus number 1.
Horus, kind of, yeah. The primary focus of this Horus. We're keeping this in broad strokes, folks. So let's continue.
All right, broad strokes.
The son of Isis and Osiris, Horus, or Heru, was born very sickly and was constantly under threat of attack by snakes and scorpions.
I'm sorry. I'm certain he was born very sickly because it was an incestual marriage. Come on.
I know. Well, and also I'm just over here saying, I give you one guess to figure out who was sending snakes and scorpions after him. Good old Uncle Set. Isis was constantly watchful for her son's safety. Despite this, as a grown man, Horus was considered to be the patron of all pharaohs, with the pharaohs being seen as the embodiment of Horus in life and the embodiment of Osiris in death. This made him the representative of young men and the perfect son, a dutiful child who grows to be an honorable man. He was also a god of protection, healing, royalty, and the sky. He was a celestial falcon, frequently depicted as a man with a falcon's head.
Atum-Ra also had a falcon head, along with several other gods, which is why Horus can sometimes be a confusing god.
And he wore a red and white crown, which symbolized his rule over Egypt. Remember anyone else who wanted to be king of Egypt? Well, Horus and Set were usually viewed as opposing forces in Egyptian mythology, with Horus representing the daytime sky and order, and Set representing the night and chaos. In some myths, Isis told her young son that he must protect Egypt from chaos. Knowing that his uncle Set had killed his father Osiris, Horus was constantly in battle with Set, both seeking to avenge his father and claim his title as rightful ruler of Egypt. The two battled for over 80 years, according to some legends, with boat races, challenges of wit, fistfights, where Set ripped out Horus's eye and Horus tore off one of Set's testicles, and sexual encounters occurring over the course of those years.
Wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
They?
Yeah.
And that was a battle?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do know that, makeup sex is great, so.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. If y'all would like to go
With
into
your uncle, I don't know.
If you want to go into more depth into that, dear listeners, feel free to Google. It's a very, very interesting tale. So, despite all of this, the two were also viewed to be at their most perfect balance when they were combined into a two-headed deity known as Horus Set, with one head being a falcon and the other head being the Set animal. This was considered to be a representation of Upper and Lower Egypt being unified, as well as a symbol of peace being achieved in the world.
I bet I know when they were unified. Woo, it's getting hot in here.
Some ancient Egyptians believed that Horus's eyes were actually the sun and moon. The written symbol of the Eye of Horus, or the Wedjat, was believed to be a good luck charm that kept evil away, and was attributed to both Horus and Atum-Ra.
I can't get over it.
I know. It's a lot.
Wow.
It's a lot.
All right, well, let's go into Anubis, shall we?
Moving on to another god.
One of the most popular and well-known of the Egyptian gods, Anubis, Ampu, has appeared in some of the oldest of the pyramid texts. Ironically, he appears in very few recorded myths. The character used for his name translates into royal child and to decay, and he was frequently referred to as Lord of the Sacred Land and he who is in the place of embalming. Anubis frequently was depicted as a man with the head of a black-furred jackal. Real jackals were brown, but black was a symbolic color of power and fertility. Other times, he would be depicted as a full jackal. Originally a god of death and the underworld, once Osiris took the role of king of the underworld, Anubis was known to be a god of funeral rites and mummification process, as well as a protector of the dead. In some versions of the myth, after being displaced by Osiris, Anubis was adopted by Osiris. Sarah, let's talk about that displacement and then adoption a little bit.
So Anubis was originally viewed as sort of the principal god of the underworld. And when Osiris died and became king of the underworld, he and Anubis had a good relationship. And in order to maintain that, Osiris said, I will adopt you as my child, as my heir, and we can be co-rulers of the underworld. I am not displacing you as a way to dishonor you. This is where I am being sent by Atum-Ra, who has greater power over us.
Right, got it. This would also go in line with the myth that he was the child of Nephthys and Osiris, rather than Nephthys and Set.
And I'll interject here because even in the myth where Anubis is the son of Osiris and Nephthys, he is raised as the son of Nephthys and Set.
Anubis was also one of the gods who documented the judgment process for the dead. Now, the judgment of the dead and the role of the soul in Egyptian mythology could be its own episode. So we're just going to go over some highlights of the process.
Broad strokes, folks. Broad strokes.
Broad strokes. Anubis would guide the soul of the dead to the underworld, and when it was time for their judgment, Anubis would take them to the Hall of Truth. There, Osiris would oversee everything. The god of wisdom Thoth would document, and goddess Mayat would be present, along with 42 great judges who would discuss the fate of the deceased. Long process, y'all. This sometimes reminds me of the DMV, but for dead people.
I love it.
Osiris would take the heart of the deceased, where the soul dwelled, and place it on a set of golden scales. On the other scale would be a feather from Mayat, the goddess of justice and balance. Should the heart weigh less than the feather, Osiris would confer with the judges and, once approved, the soul would be led to the land of eternal rest and bliss, also known as the Field of Reeds. If the heart was heavier than the feather, well, if the soul was deemed corrupt and evil, the heart
and person
would be fed to the demon Ammit. Once devoured, the soul would cease to exist. That'll make you think twice about being naughty.
Aha. So, let's discuss the goddess Mayat. Goddess of virtue, justice, cosmic order, and truth, Mayat was the ultimate goddess during the judgment of the dead in the Hall of Truth. It was a feather from her wings that the heart of the dead was weighed against, and when not in use on the scales, she wore the feather as a crown. At the beginning of time and creation, she was tasked with ensuring the world did not plunge back into chaos. She was depicted as a woman wearing an ostrich feather crown or with outstretched wings. Mayat was the word for the concepts of truth, morality, order, and justice, and the goddess herself was often the personification of these concepts. Often believed to be the female counterpart of Thoth, Mayat was credited by the Egyptians as being present at the dawn of creation and keeping the seasons in order and ensuring that the stars followed the correct course. Pharaohs were believed to rule with the authority of Mayat, and they were tasked with helping her maintain order and justice. Lawmakers and viziers were known as priests of Mayat.
Thoth, god of wisdom and knowledge. Thoth was another death god found in the Hall of Truth, which we spoke about, right? He was documenting everybody being naughty or nice, kind of like Santa Claus.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Santa Thoth.
Santa Thoth. Depicted with the head of an ibis and occasionally the head of a baboon. Wow, those are very two different things.
Right.
Very two different things. Thoth was the scribe of the gods. An ancient god, Thoth was sometimes associated with the Ogdoad. As some myths stated, he was present at the beginning of the world. In other myths, Thoth created Thoth.
Yeah, I know. And Thoth is another one of his names. Like, it is Thoth and Thought, which is why I'm just calling him Thoth this whole time. I can't do it otherwise.
No, we're not calling him a Thoth.
No, I can't do it.
In other myths, Thoth created himself through the power of language, then gave birth to the other gods of the Ogdoad. Other legends say it was Ra that created Thoth through language. I think we can all agree whatever one is true, it deals with language.
It's language.
And Thoth was a part of it. And there you go.
And we
That's
get it.
Thoth is language. Yeah. Thoth was credited with repairing Horus's eye after the battle with Set, which I think is really unfair that he didn't do, Set's testicle.
I know. Like, was that just too personal? He didn't want to get there?
It was personal.
Come on.
Yeah, maybe. This was the eye. Was he a part of the golden penis?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
You imagine Set in the corner,
He's just
mumbling, oh, okay, so you make his dick, but you won't make my balls.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. This. I love this. Now, the reparation of Horus's eye. This eye represented the moon, and Thoth became the god of the moon, replacing Ra in the sky during the night. He was credited with inventing writing, math, science, medicine, magic, the civil and religious practices of Egypt, was the mediator of disputes between gods, and was the patron of scribes and the written word.
A lot of jobs.
Yeah, a lot of jobs. He was also known as the keeper of mysteries. This guy was busy, all right? This guy was a busy man. Fun fact. The Greeks associated Thoth with their god Hermes, and his cult center in Egypt was given the Greek name Hermopolis.
Fun. Next god.
Yeah, which, real quick, they associated him with Hermes, but Hermes didn't do it just like Thoth was doing a lot.
I kind of
Hermes
feel
only did some stuff.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Thoth to me is more like Athena, especially because I think another one of Thoth's name was like he who was born without a mother or something like that. And, Athena was born directly out of Zeus's head and wisdom and all that sort of stuff. Like, there's a lot. But I do know, Hermes was a god of medicine and a messenger, and so I guess that's how they came to that. But anywho, it's not a one-to-one correlation.
At all.
Let's move on to the goddess of pleasure, sexuality, fertility, domestic life, and the holy animal, the house cat. Bastet was once represented as a woman with a lioness head, then later was depicted as a woman with the head of a domestic cat. Often considered an aspect or the alter ego of the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet, Bastet's dominion focused on the gentler subjects than her war goddess counterpart. Her nature actually becoming less warlike can be tracked with the progress of the domestication of the house cat, which I think is kind of cool.
How funny.
Right? Other depictions show her as a black cat, seated in a poised position and observing all around her. Bastet was believed to be a daughter of Ra, and in some myths, she is the mother of Anubis. Again, we're all trading parents here. During the day, she would ride on her father's boat and watch over him, and during the night, she would transform into a cat and keep an eye out for the evil Apep. She was often referred to as the Lady of the Rising Sun and the Sacred All-Seeing Eye. Since she was also a moon goddess, it was often considered that she herself was the Eye of Ra. Moving on to another daughter of Ra, Hathor was a sky goddess with dominion over women, motherhood, beauty, love, pleasure, music, dancing, and often helped the dead on their journey to the afterlife. She also shared the title of Eye of Ra with Bastet and Sekhmet. In some legends, Hathor and Isis were aspects of the same goddess, and in others, Hathor and Sekhmet were the same. Priests and priestesses could be found in her temples, and wearing makeup was a form of worship to Hathor, as she was the patron goddess of cosmetics. In some myths, she was the mother of Horus, but after that role was given to Isis in later mythology, it was believed that Hathor was the wife of Horus, and was often seen as a symbolic mother to pharaohs.
That's that you go from being the mom to the wife.
Yeah, it's very complicated. There's
Anything's possible.
There's a lot of switching of roles and titles, and yeah.
Yeah.
She was often depicted as a woman wearing cow horns and a sun disk on her head, and other times she was fully depicted as a cow. Her other names include Lady of the West, Lady of Horus, and Lady of Turquoise, as she was associated with certain minerals. For the Greeks, she was a direct counterpart to Aphrodite.
I see it. Yeah, super cute.
All right, now let's turn to the lion-headed goddess Sekhmet, the goddess of war, the hot desert sun, plague, and healing. In some myths, she is a daughter of Geb and Nut. Remember them?
Yeah.
But in the most popular legend, Ra created her out of fire and sent her to destroy a portion of humanity when it was at its most wicked and disobedient. This is how she gained the title of the Vengeful Eye of Ra. After she had punished humanity, her bloodlust was unsatisfied and she continued a killing rampage. In order to save what was left of mankind, the gods dyed beer red and offered it to Sekhmet. Thinking it was the blood of her enemies, she drank until she was drunk and fell asleep. When she woke up, she was satisfied with the destruction she had caused and returned to her father's side.
Ah, so it worked.
It worked! In some variations, she wakes up as Hathor. Other tellings of the same myth state that Sekhmet was enraged when she woke up, having realized the gods had deceived her. In her rage, she left Egypt, taking part of the power of the sun with her. The god of wisdom Thoth was sent after her, and after much persuasion, was able to convince Sekhmet to return to Egypt and save the land from being plunged into darkness and chaos.
Damn, they can't send anybody else. Thoth is busy.
He is way busy.
He gotta do so much, and they're also making him a part of like this. Come on now.
Right? You know what? I think he likes the drama, honestly. I think Thoth might be a little messy.
He documents it. Oh my God, he's Gossip Girl.
He is Gossip Girl. Oh my gosh, yeah. Now, Sekhmet did return. Order was restored, balance was restored, and the Egyptians held a New Year's festival of dancing and drunkenness to honor Sekhmet, sparing them from destruction. Now, she was the patroness of the pharaoh during wartime, and was also the patroness of physicians and doctors. Her followers believed that if she favored you, she could cure any illness. When Sekhmet was feeling benevolent, it was believed that she turned into Bastet, while, as we said, other myths claimed that the two were distinct individuals who were sisters. She was the wife of Ptah, the god of creation and architecture, and the mother of the war god Mahes and the god of lotus flowers, Nefertum. All right. That's all the Egyptian gods we're covering today.
We can't do any more.
I know we're missing several, including Sobek, Ptah, Hapi, Seshat, Khonshu, Taweret, Isfet, Bes.
Sarah, breathe, Sarah, breathe.
And others. But I beg for your patience. There are over 2,000 Egyptian gods.
And Sarah was about like this close from self-combusting if she continued her research in this episode. Let me tell you something. This episode took her 2 weeks. That has never happened to us before. And I did ask you if you needed help, but you were like, no, this is mine.
Well, it's also just the fact of like, how do you trade off what gets covered? Because there's just so much going on. And yeah, you have the next episode. You have the next one.
Here, yeah.
Let's go to modern media.
How about this? Exactly. And let's start it off, we have to, The Dang Mummy.
Yes.
The Hot Mummy. Starring Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, and Arnold Vosloo. It's a deeply loved classic by both Sarah and I, and honestly, Brendan will forever make me swoon,
Yes.
but also the rest of the cast, they are so damn hot.
They're so pretty. They're
Why
so
is
dreamy.
everybody hot?
They're so dreamy.
Oh my
I love it.
God.
Oh. The Netflix series Castlevania Nocturne features Sekhmet as a key figure in the story. If you haven't seen the show, I won't spoil it for you. And speaking of vampires and Egypt, Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles series dabbles in a little bit of Egyptian mythology, with the character of an ancient Egyptian queen, Akasha, playing a key role in the series. While there are no direct references to the gods of Egypt, Akasha is viewed as a goddess herself. The Marvel comic book hero Moon Knight has a close relationship with many of the Egyptian gods in his series.
Blast from the past. Nickelodeon's House of Anubis was a great show for its time. It followed a group of teens living life at boarding school in the UK. It's filled with mystery, suspense, romance, and honestly, teen drama, all of which leads back to Egyptian myth. And it's available on streaming sites.
If you are a gamer, the Egyptian gods make several appearances in the Smite video game franchise. And
which Sarah voices in one of them.
I do. I play a couple characters. Rick Riordan, author of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, also has The Kane Chronicles, a book series that follows a pair of siblings as they navigate a world filled with humans and Egyptian gods and goddesses. Fun fact, it takes place in the same universe as Percy Jackson.
And we did reference this at the beginning of the episode, and we hope you figured it out. You gotta watch The Prince of Egypt.
In The Prince of Egypt, we meet Moses, who, of course, has to face off against the Egyptian gods. And it's pretty epic. It's pretty epic. It's so
the
good.
Soundtrack
the soundtrack
is amazing.
outstanding. The animation is beautiful. I mean, it's a
beautiful.
Fantastic movie. I don't care if you're not religious or anything like that. It's a good movie.
It's a good movie, and it still gets played a lot. Everybody still talks about it. I mean, Alex makes me listen to the OST of the show all the time.
I listen to soundtrack
at least
all
once
the time.
a month.
Yes.
Yeah. At least once a month we got to listen to it.
What was it? Last year I had a Prince of Egypt watch party for some of my friends.
My God.
We all came over and we cooked food and we just watched it. And we were like, yes.
I really get upset that you don't invite me to these.
I do.
Whatever.
You never make it through traffic.
Yeah, it is pretty far.
All right, folks, let's go to our siren call. It's time to watch The Mummy. It is such a classic.
And again, lots of hot people. Also, The Mummy #2 is really good too, because then the mom and the other character, they fight, and it's like a really sexy, hot
Moon
women, fight. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we are referring to like the 1999 Brendan Fraser, The Mummy.
Yeah.
Like if you're thinking of anything with Tom Cruise, no, erase that.
Yeah,
absolutely
no.
not. But if you are thinking of like a classic Curse of the Mummy movie that's like, black and white, also enjoy that. But 1999, Brendan Fraser, The Mummy.
1999.
Mwah, chef's
Brendan
kiss.
Fraser.
All right.
Yes, very good.
Yenny, get us out of here. I've talked enough.
Yeah, we're out of here, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Story Sirens. You can follow us on Instagram at Story Sirens Podcast. Want to support us? Send us a cup of Ko-fi by searching ko-fi.com/storysirens. We've got lots of treats for those who become siren seekers. All research materials can be found in the episode summary. Music by Donald Guzzi and artwork by Alexis Torres. Story Sirens is a Feather and Fin production. See you soon.